remember correctly, September, I think it was 18th. Anybody remember the date? September 18th. Do?
Yep.
So we're going to read a little bit from there this morning too. All right, well, we're going to touch on the Electoral College this morning. You may see the title, it says The Electoral College. And I don't know if you ever watch any sports and they not interview, but they do the starting lineups like for the football teams. And I always cracked up when the guys from Ohio State, they would tell you what college they're from. And they would say, The Ohio State, as if there's no other university in the state, right? That's what they're saying, right? So it's one of the other colleges kicked on or caught up on that. So a lot of they'll say, the Ohio State. So I put the Electoral College because some of our representatives think that the Electoral College is an actual college somewhere. And I even heard this last week that this young lady drove across our country looking for the Electoral College. So I thought we better talk about that. So hopefully she'll be watching this morning.
Nice.
And
Was that AOC?
Yeah.
so hopefully she's watching this morning, and we can help her this morning with the understanding. What do you think you should know about the Electoral College before you get elected? As a representative or the Congress, right?
Wow.
So let me say this morning about that. So the Electoral College. All right, so you're going to see that this morning. The Electoral College. Here's your maxim. Remember what a maxim was? Everybody remember what a maxim is? Maxim?
Sounds big.
Maxim. It's like our proposition. But do you remember what we said it was? A maxim? It's similar to the spiritual truth that we're trying to get to. It's an established principle or propositions. That's what we call on off days, Patriot Church days, we call it a proposition or a proposal. And on Patriot days, we call it a maxim. A maxim is a principle generally received or admitted as true. So the maxim. So here's the maxim this morning. Here's the aha moment. This should curl some hair this morning. If you're not a student of the Electoral College, then you are not a patriot of the United States of America.
Whoa. That's
That's
heavy.
pretty strong. I'm
Heavy.
going to tell you why it's that strong. Remember what we said a patriot was. You go back to old Webster and look at his definition of patriotism. That gets a bad rap from some people these days. I don't understand why, other than they just want to fight and cause division. But being a patriot should not cause division, amen? Being a patriot should bring us all together.
Amen.
Right.
But we looked back, it was back in March, we talked about our call of duty. And this is what some definitions of patriotism were. If you just look up old Merriam-Webster recent definition, you'll see that patriotism is love for or devotion to one's country, we said. Look back in Webster's 1828, patriotism is love of one's country, the passion which aims to serve one's country, either in defending it from invasion or protecting its rights and maintaining its laws and institutions in vigor and purity. I think some folks in Congress need to hear this one.
Wow.
Patriotism is the characteristic of a good citizen, the noblest passion that animates a man or woman in the character of a citizen. Patriotism. We said that true patriotism is not just an emotional feeling, it's an action. And we said that love for country and a call of duty, service to country, defense of the country, protection of the rights of country, maintenance of the laws and institutions of country, and preservation of religion and morality in public and private life. This kind of patriotism puts the needs of the country above the personal or partisan desires, as well as above the favor of foreign nations.
We really need to learn that.
Patriotism.
Wow.
So, If you're not a student of the Electoral College, then you certainly cannot truly be a patriot of these United States of America. You know, and the same thing holds true in a lot of other things in life. There's folks that are saying today that, hey, we'll just say it, that they're Christian, and their lives don't line up as what the Bible lines up to, but yet we're Christian. There's some that say they're members of a particular party, yet their voting and their talking doesn't line up with those platform issues. There's folks that go and say that they're dads and they're moms, but yet how they treat their children doesn't seem to line up to be what a true mom or dad looks like. How about husbands? How about wives? What area of life do you want to go into to see the trueness of what we're talking about? And that last song we just sang calls it out, doesn't it? I got to look at those words again. Because that one verse just basically calls us all out and says, hey, the Star Spangled Banner, which we have never really sung the second and third verse. What was that one? Close. Everybody remember what we just sang? Audio song? What was that? Breathe, Steve, and it's fitfully blows. Talking about the flag, but then the last verse, then conquer what we must, cause it just. So is that the one? Maybe that wasn't the one. Man, it stuck with me. America the Beautiful. No, it was America the Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, that's one. There you go.
Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. May God thy gold refine, till all success be noblest, and every gain divine. More than self. Who more than self their country loves. So that's why old Dr. Benjamin Rush put it in the right order. He said God, country, family. God, country, family. So let's look at some of those things this morning in regard to this, the Electoral College. Electoral College. All right. Let's start out with the foundation of the Electoral College. All schools have a foundation. Man, I was looking up some of the older schools, the old Ivy League schools. Everybody know where they came up with that Ivy League term? Oh, by the way, the straws came in, by the way.
Trump straws?
Red straws. Match my red cup.
Ivy growing on the buildings?
What's that?
The ivy growing on?
That's what I thought it was. You know, maybe the ivy growing on the ivory tower kind of thing, right? But there was originally 4 schools, IV, in Roman numerals. This is where most of them think it comes from. IV is the Roman numeral for 4.
Wow.
And the original 4 schools, they used to call them colonial schools back in the day when they began as Christian training centers.
Where's the I come, or the Y? You
Oh,
said the
IV.
IV. Where's the
Turned
Y?
into IV,
Oh,
not like intravenous. But,
I got you.
yeah. So Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Dartmouth were basically considered the 4 original Ivy League schools. Harvard,
Wow.
of course, the first 1636, and then there were some others that came up. But they were considered the colonial schools, and of course they were considered to be Christian training centers. If you look, I think it's Harvard, their motto is still Veritas,
Wow.
which is Latin for truth.
Wow.
Truth. I'm not sure if they're abiding in their original motto these days.
Wow.
So that's why I want to look at the Electoral College. So the Declaration of Independence gives us a foundation to the Electoral College. So let's look at this for a moment. I'm going to start out in the Declaration, and I'm going to read the preamble, and then I wrote down the second section there. So here's the Declaration of Independence. It says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station in which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That's the preamble of the Declaration. Now look at this next section. Again, this is the foundation for the Electoral College. It says this. You guys probably know this one. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from where? The consent of the governed. Don't forget that part. And so look at these four essential principles. You want to understand the Electoral College, you got to understand the Declaration of Independence. Four essential principles that are pointed out in this paragraph are, one, what? Self-evident truths. These are the undeniable fact that moral absolutes exist. There's many in our world today that want to do away with moral absolutes.
That's right.
So in order to get rid of, you can see this, it's been this chipping away, this slow eating away, like busy little bees, eating away at our foundational truth about our freedom. So it wasn't some big deal. It was something that started back and became through our school system, our colleges and universities. The twist began there. Now they're chipping away. Now we see different things happening in our world today. One, of course, is this idea that there are no moral absolutes. Well, according to the Declaration of Independence, there are self-evident truths, these undeniable facts that moral absolutes exist. Secondly, second essential principle is that we are endowed by our Creator. What's our banner say back there? Our Constitution was made for a moral and a religious people. So if we're going to be an immoral and unreligious people, then the Constitution's not going to work well.
Wow.
And we can see that by what people are saying we need to amend, what we need to do away with. None of those folks that are saying these amendments need to take place, these unconstitutional things that are taking place, are saying anything that's backed up with morality and religious fervor. Endowed by our Creator. Our unalienable right to freedom comes from Almighty God.
Amen.
The consent of the governed. I think many in Congress have forgot that they work for us. That they derive their power from the consent of the governed. We proclaim it every morning at school. When we do our, what's our creed? America's Creed. By William Tyler Page. Remember? Can we say it? Say that. Consent of the governed. We the people have a voice in our government. Many of you want to take away your voice. Want to tell you don't have a voice. Or want to squelch your voice. We say things like, well, if you don't believe like us, well then, hey, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe, you're a whatever. Unbelievable. The pursuit of happiness. It's the fourth essential principle that they talk about in the Declaration. A foundation of the Electoral College. The pursuit of happiness. What's important about this? Well, the pursuit of happiness, the importance of free enterprise to our freedom. There's been this big debate. Wait, well, if you're a Christian, you must be a socialist. Well, Christianity is socialist. I've heard people say Jesus is a socialist. Well, he's not.
I don't think so.
He's not. And then there's a big debate, well, what, are you capitalist? Okay, well, if you don't want to think that or lean more capitalist, then at least I can take you to the parables and show you the free market, the free enterprise.
Yes, that's how it's
We
written
are
in the Constitution.
believers of free enterprise. And it's the importance of free enterprise to our freedom. Check out this quote by George Washington, number 2 there. He said this, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality," George said, "are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness." What are these great pillars of human happiness? Religion and morality. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. President George Washington.
Wow.
That's the foundation of the Electoral College. Where else can we see the Electoral College? Well, the Electoral College is absolutely clearly stated in the Constitution of the United States. It's Article 2, Section 1. So you can turn there in your Constitution. Article 2, Section 1. And I'll give you some paragraphs there you can check out later. I'm going to read some to you this morning. But it's Section 1, and then it goes down to, of course, 2.1. Somebody, in your Constitutional Live study guide, you can look in there, and it breaks it down easy for you. Because it's called The Constitution Made Easy. So I'll just read it out. But so it's Section 2, Article 2, and then Section 1, and then each paragraph, paragraph 1, 2. So it's paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then paragraph 10 in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, and then paragraphs 1 through 6, and then paragraph 10 talks about the Electoral College. So let me read it to you real quick. First, talks about this, Section 1, Paragraph 1. The executive power will be entrusted to a President of the United States. He or she will hold his or her office for a term of 4 years, not to exceed 2 terms. Each term will begin and end at noon on January 20th. The President and Vice President will be elected to the same term as follows. And here it goes, Paragraph 2. Each state and Washington, D.C. was added by the 23rd Amendment, must appoint a number of electors equal to the total number of senators and representatives which a state or district is entitled to in Congress. So did you guys know how the electorals came up? I didn't actually realize that until I was reading this.
Nice.
So each state has 2 senators, and then each state has representatives by the size of the population of the state.
Yeah.
So what do we have for Florida? You know how many electors we have? Well, I know California is easy, it's 55. So 55 electors for California. 2 of those are senators, and the 53 are representatives.
29.
What do we have?
29.
29 we have?
Yeah.
So that would go for each section, where each representative, and then 2. Now, back in, I think it was 1960, maybe, when D.C. was amended. Washington, D.C. was amended, and they don't have senators, but they gave them the minimum number of electors, which is 3. So D.C. has 3. So that made it clear for me, because I didn't remember how we got all our electors. So take your senators and add your representatives, and that gives you how many electors you have.
535.
So the legislature of each state may determine the manner in which the electors are chosen. No senator or rep or person having held an official position under the United States may be appointed as an elector. And what else? The electors must meet their respective states. meet in their respective states, and vote by a ballot for president and vice president. They may not vote for a president and a vice president who are both from the same state as the electors. They must name in one set of ballots the person they voted for as president, and in a different set of ballots the person they voted for as vice president. They must make separate lists of all the persons they voted for as president and all the persons they voted for as vice president, and the number of votes for each. They must sign these lists and certify that they are correct, send them sealed to the President of the Senate.
Wow.
President and Senate must open all the certificates in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, and the votes must be therefore then counted. The person receiving the greatest number of votes for president will become the president, as long as he or she receives a majority of the total number of electors. So now, since 1964, it's been 270 is the midway point of electors. Do you know how many we have total electors?
538.
538. So you have 100 plus 435 plus 3, right? So 538.
Where does the 3 come from?
Washington, D.C.
Because we're studying, and in our studies,
Right.
we have 535.
Yeah, so add 3 for D.C., District of Columbia.
So why isn't that written in our studies?
I don't know, you should find out though.
Yes, we should.
Because that's since 60 what? 60 or 64 is when the amendment 20, which amendment did I say it was?
23rd.
23rd.
So it changed in
Oh,
64, but it's still written in the study guides that we're using today.
It's in our study guide,
Wow,
yeah. So the 20, of course I got my pocket,
nice.
yeah, makes it easy. Can't pull one over on you. Yeah, so the 20th Amendment. 23rd Amendment, yeah. So that, it'll tell me the date on this. 1961. District of constituting the seat of government shall appoint in such a manner as the Congress may. Number of electors, president. Yeah. So that's, so the minimum, which is 3. So they have 3. So, what else then? So it's interesting, as I was reading through this, you know, November is our election. Well, in December, this is when they do the certification of the electors. And you know what happens if you don't have a majority of electors?
Goes to the House.
Right.
They decide.
Yeah, and I put it in here. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. So we'll see that in the second part. But anyway, yeah. So it goes to the House, and then the House gets to choose. Gets to choose the
I
president.
wonder who that would be right now.
Interesting. Yeah. So, and hopefully they go by the electorals, but hey, if it's really close, it's got to be a majority for the electors, so that 270. So if they don't get to 270, then you have to go to the House, which is interesting. All right. So that is the, okay, so that's section, paragraph 5, and then paragraph 6 talks about the quorum. Each state has 1 vote. And then and then paragraph 10, which was Congress may determine from time to time of choosing the electors, the day on which they must cast their votes. This day must be the same throughout the United States. So again, if you don't have the majority of the electors, then it goes to Congress. So just some interesting things. But hey, you got to read it, right, to understand it. So of course you need to read it a few more times than that.
Yes.
So, the President in the United States will be elected by the Electoral College. The Electoral College is founded and grounded in the Constitution. The Electoral College is an essential part of America, and the Electoral College encapsulates what the Founding Fathers deemed important for our republic. We are a republic, a democratic republic, if you will, not a democracy.
That's right.
We're not a pure democracy. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that, whether it's from somebody that's in an elected office or somebody just talking about it and say, hey, we're a democracy. So we're going to look at some of these fallacies of the Electoral College. And what are some of these fallacies? What's a fallacy? Well, a fallacy is a deception or a false appearance. That which misleads the eye or the mind. That's a fallacy. So here's some fallacies of the Electoral College. One I've just looked up and heard recently. Shouldn't the person with the most votes win? Well,
Hope not.
That's how we vote for our governors, that's how we vote for our local officials, that's how we vote for everybody else except the president and the vice president. And there's major reason why the Founding Fathers chose them. Smaller state, here's one that is interesting. Smaller state electors count more than larger states.
Right.
Well, there's this movement called the National Popular Vote Movement.
Yes.
And what the movement is rather than trying to amend the Constitution, do you know how you put an amendment through in the Constitution? You have to have 2/3 supermajority, 2/3 majority vote in the Senate, a 2/3 approval in the House, and you need to have 3/4 of the states approve it in order to put an amendment in. So this National Popular Vote Movement is pretty much saying, well, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to try our own way. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to do an end around the Constitution. And rather than amend the Constitution, the National Popular Vote is asking states to sign a contract for the states to, quote, give their electors to the popular vote winner.
I just heard Delaware did that.
They did. They're
Yeah.
one of, there's where I wrote it down. There are,
9 or 10.
yes, where down here. There are 10 states plus DC that have already signed these contracts.
Unbelievable.
And if you add up their Electoral College votes, there's 165
Wow.
of the 270 already approving it. California, Washington, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, Vermont, Hawaii, and Delaware.
If not when it goes to the Supreme Court.
I know. We hope.
I know, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but
Wow.
you think about that. So there was an example, I think, in our Constitution study. The year that George Bush, let's see, was it
George W.
won the, one year he won the popular, one year he didn't win the popular.
Yeah,
So the year he won the popular vote, that would say then that even though Al Gore, that wasn't that one, it was one of the others. But anyway, even though somebody, the Democrat will say won California, they would have to give their 55 electoral votes to the Republican who won the popular vote. I have a hard time believing that they would
Wow.
be okay with that. Right? So, but think about it from a constitutional perspective. If I'm a state of, it's a state of Florida, voted for a candidate, we'll just use the last election, and President Trump won, but since he didn't win the popular vote, the state of Florida is going to give their votes, their electoral votes, to the Democratic candidate, wouldn't that rob the state of their sovereignty? And wouldn't that, whoa.
Wow.
And
We don't
wouldn't
want
that be illegal?
Wow.
Wouldn't that be unconstitutional to rob the states of their sovereignty? Does that make sense? So that doesn't make sense. But yet, we have 10 states plus the District of Columbia who have already decided that that's what they're going to do. So again, like you say, if it has to go to the Supreme Court, we're hoping that the Constitution will continue to rule and reign.
Well,
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The Electoral College is perfectly applicable. We see the importance in that, but one of the issues that we don't seem to be going after, you call it robbery when these states are going to go about doing things this way as the Electoral College. And we know for certain now, after this several years, that he was robbed out of the popular vote too. Where is all the voter accountability, all the accountability all the way across the board? In the Democratic states, Project Veritas, we all know who he
Right.
is. But beyond that, even within our own government agencies, they've done a lot of investigating, and they have found that there was a lot of chicanery, there were millions, not
Yep.
just a few thousand,
Yep.
millions and millions of votes were skewed the wrong way, but they were setting it up for a rob. And that's something that we have to be equally
Yep.
fighting for,
Yeah.
to watch out for.
And that's one of the great wisdoms from the Founding Fathers of the Electoral College, which helps to stop any kind of fraud or, so the votes in California have nothing to do with the votes in Florida. But if it was a pure democracy and we just went for popular vote, then we could easily mix and match votes, and there would be no state sovereignty.
Or
Here's an
accountability.
state assemblyman from New York said this, just recently. He said, the Electoral College is an 18th century anachronism that no longer serves the goals of pure democracy. Duh! That's my first thought was, duh, we're not a pure democracy. Here's a state assemblyman voted in, and he said, yeah, you're right, it doesn't serve a pure democracy, because we're not a pure democracy. And then most recently, that other young woman who was actually looking for the Electoral College, she said just recently, I mean this last week or two, she said the Electoral College is a scam, quote, unquote, scam. She said it disenfranchises people of color. The Electoral College has, quote, a racial injustice breakdown.
Good
It
Lord.
effectively weighs white voters over voters of color as opposed to one person, one vote.
Unbelievable.
How does that do?
Unbelievable.
That's exactly what I said. How does that do that?
What is anything that
Doesn't
she
make
said
any
bringing
sense.
about? Everything that those people
I
are
know.
wrong, they're just,
So does that make any sense?
no, not one bit.
So each state, the way the founding fathers set it up is each state has,
How's it based?
what we have when we vote for our president and vice president, we actually have 50 states plus DC, 51 popular vote contests. And then so the people get their voice. I'm skipping ahead, but that's okay. And then the states get their voice, the Electoral College vote.
Yes.
And then if need be, Congress can get their vote. So each branch, not of government, but each part, the people have a voice, the states have a voice, sovereign states, and
Federal government.
the government has a voice. Everybody gets a voice in the Electoral College. If it's just the national popular vote, then who gets the voice? The largest population areas get the voice. Now, I looked up some YouTube videos that oppose the Electoral College. And if you don't know the Constitution, it sounds really good. They make a good case. But they don't stand in the foundation of the Constitution to make their case. So that's why it's so important that we take a month a Sunday out of the month and talk about something that has to do with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
Yes.
Because you've got to know this,
Amen.
Right.
or you're going to get swept away.
That's right.
So this is important. So that's why we take the time to do it. So here's some facts. Point 3. Facts of the Electoral College. Facts. And you heard somebody say something about facts and truth? Well, we choose truth over facts.
No, because truth can be twisted.
Hello?
Truth
What
can
does
be
that
twisted.
mean? What in the world does that mean? He's not going by facts?
No.
Well, fact is, could also be a truth. And conformity to a fact is a truth. And a fact is a conformity to the truth. So to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. See, they try to take that out now. Well, if somebody's not going to give an oath, whether they're a witness or whether they're in Congress, who do they come under accountability to?
wow.
It always used to be under Almighty God.
Yeah.
And that their oath was their word. But that's no longer happens many places today. So since 1964, there's been 538 electors, 435 of the House, 100 senators, and 3 of D.C. So the candidate needs to win 270 or more. The Founding Fathers had absolutely no intention of a pure democracy. Read it, read it, read it. Every place you go, every quote you see, you will say that for yourself, that they had no intention of a pure democracy. They looked through history past. They looked at France, they looked at England, they looked at other societies that had pure democracies, and they knew that it would not last. Here's some quotes.
That's crazy.
John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration of Independence. This is part number 3 under little small Roman numeral 1 there. Pure democracy cannot subsist long, nor be carried far into the departments of state. It is very subject to caprice and the madness of popular rage. Does not that sound like today? popular rage. John Witherspoon, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Here's another one. John Adams said this. Remember, he said, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide.
Wow.
John Adams. Dr. Benjamin Rush. A simple democracy, or pure democracy, is one of the greatest evils, he said. A democracy is a mobocracy. And what's that say? It says, why should 51% of the people have rule over 49% of the people?
That's right.
That's why we don't vote that way for our president and vice president. The Founding Fathers rejected having the president elected by popular vote because the most populated areas would outvote the more rural areas. The Electoral College is a way for people to have a voice and the states to have a voice. We both have a voice in that, the way they set it up. The Founding Fathers created the Electoral College to, quote, strike a balance that would require the winner to have both a sufficient vote of the people and a sufficient distribution of the vote. Go online, pull up the Electoral College maps. They do red and they do blue. And see where the dispersion or display or whatever, or where it shows up in the country.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to make a big deal about, well, you know, Donald Trump, this last election, he didn't get the popular vote. Matter of fact, it was, what, 2-point-something million votes he lost by. Well, but if you look at the distribution of votes, there's like a little bit of blue here, a little bit of blue here, a little bit of blue here, and the rest is red. And then you can break it down by county
Yeah.
and see. Go back and look at past elections to see some of the distribution. This is why there's a sufficient, getting 59, 61 million votes is a sufficient number of votes. And winning, how do we play it? Sufficient vote and a sufficient distribution of the vote. If you just win California and you just win New York and New Jersey, that's not sufficient. That's not a sufficient spread of votes. It's not a sufficient number of votes. And that's why we have the Electoral College. You've got to know that. You've got to study that. You've got to be ready to come to the defense of that, because I don't know, it hasn't come up yet for our state, I don't think, about signing some crazy contract. But it could. There's a push for it. You got to be ready. If we elected by popular vote, this is letter F, the president, elected president by popular vote, then big cities would decide for us. Here's Dr. Benjamin Rush. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Rush writing back and forth to each other. Here's what Thomas Jefferson said. Here's what he said about the big cities. He said, I view great cities as pestilential to the morals, the health, and the libraries of man. Ouch. Look at what Dr. Benjamin Rush said in response to that letter.
Liberties of man.
I agree with you, Thomas Jefferson, in your opinions of cities. Cowper, the poet, very happily expresses our ideas of them compared with the country. God made the country, man made the cities.
Whoa.
Don't be offended if you live in the city.
Whoa.
I consider them in the same light that I do abscesses on the human body, as reservoirs of all the impurities of a community. Dr. Benjamin Rush. So, with the Electoral College, like we said, we have 51 popular elections. The people vote. Then the electors, the states, choose. And if needed, Congress chooses. You know, there's only 5 times in history that the president has been elected without winning the popular vote. 5 times. 1, Rutherford B. Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, George W. Bush, Donald Trump. And that's 4. And then there's 1 who had not been elected by the Electoral College. Anybody know who that was?
Ford.
Yeah.
Close, go back. John Quincy Adams.
Oh, really?
Didn't win the popular vote. There was no majority on the Electoral College, so it went to Congress.
Oh, wow.
And Congress chose John Quincy Adams. And there's some
Over
other
who?
reasons.
Who was he fighting?
Yeah, I know you're gonna tell me
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh. That's all right.
Somebody pretty well known though.
I'm sure.
Yeah, John Quincy, yeah, I'll look it up for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can probably Google it.
Yeah.
Other reasons, why do we need the Electoral College? Well, the Electoral College also can and does at times, but recently they're finding other ways, discourages voter fraud. We're finding, bless you, from different studies, that there's some voter fraud going on.
No.
So if you didn't have the Electoral College, think how much more rampant it could be.
That's right.
It's harder to steal elections with the Electoral College. The Electoral College protects against the tyranny of the majority.
Yeah.
That's that mobocracy that they talked about. Electoral College encourages coalition building and national campaigning. That means every state matters. If you had a popular vote, then candidates would only go to the big cities. Why would they go to Montana to vote? Why would they go to smaller states if they knew they didn't worry about it? They need the votes. But with the Electoral College, that's why Montana, they have 3 Electoral College votes, but it's really important when you break it down. Because all those other states all add up. And that's why it's important to have the Electoral College. Without the Electoral College, every state wouldn't matter. Let me give you some final thoughts on some quotes here. George Mason. How does this apply to us? Well, it applies to us not only as citizens, it applies to us as Christians as well. And this is why. He said, "No free government nor the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people but by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles."
Amen.
I can't tell you how many man on the street little survey things I watch, and people can't name the vice president.
Wow.
People can't tell you what kind of government we have. It's unbelievable to see that. So we have to have, as George Mason calls it, a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. And that applies to our word, doesn't it, as well? The Word of God. So I added it down at the last part there. Diligently, as John Jay said, read and study the Constitution. And now we're going to add the word in there, aren't we?
Yes.
Because we know that's important, because that's what happened to the church. The church was not diligent in years past. When prayer was taken out of school, the church was not diligent in knowing what the Constitution said and knowing what the Bible said. Read and study the Constitution and the Word. Teach the rising generation to be free, so that by knowing their rights, they will sooner perceive when they are violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them.
That's right.
Wow. When the American founders, I'm reading out of my Patriot Bible now. When the American founders wrapped up the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia on September 18, 1787, they knew they had hammered out a system of government far different from any than that had existed throughout the world. It was a government based on the laws of nature and of nature's God,
Amen.
rather than an arbitrary and unjust rule of man. So, what did we say in the beginning? If we're not a student of the Electoral College, then you're really not a patriot of these United States of America. Let me close with that prayer again. I want to read that prayer one more time. From General Robert E. Lee. With this prayer. General Lee said this is his prayer. He said, knowing that intercessory prayer is our mightiest weapon and the supreme call for all Christians today, I pleadingly urge our people everywhere to pray, believing that prayer is the greatest contribution that our people can make in this critical hour. I humbly urge that we take time to pray, to really pray. Let there be prayer at sunup, at noonday, at sundown, at midnight, all through the day. Let us all pray for our children, for our youth, for the aged, and for our pastors, for our homes. Let us pray for our churches. Let us pray for ourselves that we may not lose the word concern out of our Christian vocabulary. Let us pray for our nation. Let us pray for those who have never known Jesus Christ and His redeeming love. For moral forces everywhere, for our national leaders, let prayer be our passion. Let prayer be our patience. May that be our prayer, Jesus. As General Lee prayed that so many years ago. How that prayer totally applies to what we're dealing with today. We pray that you would surround us and protect us and guard our hearts and guard our minds. Lord, empower in us a burn and a desire to read, to study, to show ourselves approved. To have this frequent recurrence of your word, of our Constitution, so that we will know our rights. And that if our rights are ever going to be infringed upon, that we would be ready to know that and to come against that. So we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love. We thank you for the liberty in which Christ has made us free.
Yes.
We thank you for this place. We thank you for the breath you give us
Yes.
to be able to speak these truths. So I pray, oh God, they would come alive in our lives. As our study says, constitutional life. Come alive in our lives, oh God, so that we can continue to see our freedoms of our country grow, to see the liberties of our country sustained, to see the truth of God, country, and family continue to be proclaimed throughout our world. We love you, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. Amen.